This is probably the best model you can think of in terms of your businesses. One way, simple way of figuring out whether you are maximizing profit or not is to just say, what is my elasticity of demand? If you have some degree of monopoly power and if your elasticity of demand is less than 1, then you cannot be maximizing profit. Perfect competition is not suitable. So, we say that monopoly is probably the most sensible market structure or the most useful market structure for you. The reason being, almost everybody is a monopolist at some degree or other. If you think about it, what does being a monopolist mean? Well, being a monopolist, if you take the meaning to be the sole producer in the market, there are none. But if you instead of monopolist, if you think of your monopoly power as the ability to raise prices without significantly losing sales or losing the number of quantity demanded. If you think about it as that way, then almost everybody, right? If you think of any producer, if you think of the guy who's selling vegetables outside, even that person has a degree of monopoly power, right? The complete absence of any control over prices is very rare, right? You can do something or the other usually. So, you can think of everybody as being a tiny monopolist. All of us face competition from the outside, but to some degree everybody is, to the extent that you say that I have some control over pricing, then you are saying in some small way I am a monopolist. What are the sources of monopoly power? When will you have the ability to raise prices without significantly affecting quantity demanded? One obviously is the elasticity of demand, which we have been talking about. The more elastic or inelastic the demand is, good. So, you were talking about salt, yes, if you are in the salt business, inelastic demand, but that gives you monopoly power. But that is not where it ends. What else affects monopoly power? Second is the number of firms. If there are more firms in the market, so even though you are producing salt, if there are lots of salt producers, the demand for your firm will be elastic. And finally, of course, which we shall talk about, type of competition. So, the type of good matters, the number of firms matter, and the type of competition that prevails in the market, that also matters, which will all come together to get the elasticity of demand for your product. So, the elasticity of demand for the product, say something like electricity, might be very low. You might say inelastic demand. But the elasticity of demand for instance, electricity, do you care whose electricity it is? Is it, suppose there were 5 or 6 producers of electricity, would you say I like that electricity better than this electricity? You would say it does not matter, the perfect substitute. So, even though the product might be inelastic, the elasticity of demand that you are facing could be very elastic. So, I would argue that for most people, for most firms, for most businesses, very difficult to face an inelastic demand, because even if the demand for the product is inelastic, competition will make the demand for your product very much more elastic.